News Voice is the world's first mobile app that helps you track where your news is coming from. News Voice helps you track what corporate interests might be influencing the narratives in the news you read every day. Arm yourself against corporate media monopolies by downloading the News Voice app for free using the link right underneath this video. This is very, very fun to watch. Over the last few weeks, former Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg has been appearing on Fox News pretty often, and he's been laying out some smackdowns that are truly a delight to watch. It's just a pleasure to watch. It's a clinic on how to deal with Fox News. So Mayor Pete has been doing appearances as a surrogate of and advisor to Joe Biden. And Mayor Pete has this, it's almost like a natural ability to casually deliver hilarious and brutal attack lines that you just have to see. This first one might be my favorite. Mayor Pete is interviewed by Fox News anchors Martha MacCallum and Bret Baier. This was on the eve of the vice presidential debate. The question was, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have, or at least during the campaign, had different views on healthcare, and they wanted to put Mayor Pete in a position to have to explain or defend. Kamala has this view, Joe Biden has this view. How do you square it? What's the right view? And Mayor Pete brilliantly points out that if you look at Trump and Pence, there's also a contrast from the primary, from, between their views, which is that Pence is an evangelical Christian and Trump is a president caught with a porn star. And the looks on the faces of the Fox News anchors are just priceless.
Back to my original question about the things that, when you run for president, you have a record on all of these issues. And then we've seen that record and her stance on them changing over time. So there's no doubt she's going to be asked about that tonight. Can you give us some insight into what she might say to justify why she was for Medicare for all then and is not for it now, for example?
Well, there's a classic parlor game of trying to find a little bit of daylight between running mates. And if people want to play that game, we could look into why an evangelical Christian like Mike Pence wants to be on a ticket with a president caught with a porn star, or how he feels about the immigration policy that he called unconstitutional before he decided to team up with Donald Trump. If folks want to play that game, we could do it all night. But I think what most Americans want to hear about is, are our families going to be better protected than they have been by this president who's failed to secure America in the face of one of the most dangerous things ever to happen to our country?
You actually get the feeling that this is fun for Pete Buttigieg. It's a game, which I have to tell you, I love. I've been on Fox News a couple of times, and I also see it as a joke and a game for myself. I don't see it as serious journalism. I see it more as, what can I do to make this interesting? Pete Buttigieg, much better than me at making it really interesting. And there's more of these. Here's one where Chris Wallace tried to get Pete Buttigieg again on this primary stuff, saying, do you stand by your criticisms of Joe Biden when you were running against him? And Mayor Pete just handles it perfectly.
Well, what I know is we definitely need to turn the page even more now than when I was running for president a year ago. And what we need to turn the page from is a president who is incapable of handling a public health crisis that has now cost almost 250,000 American lives, thrown our economy into a total wreckage, and has clearly no plan to do anything about it. So, yeah, let's turn the page. And we have a very clear choice between two very different futures for this country, and any differences that we have. Remember when everybody was hand-wringing, saying, how can the Democrats possibly unify? Look how unified we are now. You've got Democrats from across the spectrum, from the left to the center, joining with independents and Republicans, because we can all see what's at stake here. I mean, I can't think of an election in modern history where the choice has been this stark, and I know what side I'm on.
What's brilliant about this, and perfectly done, is that Mayor Pete goes directly at the top issues for voters, economy and COVID, and turns the question completely around and wraps it up with a bow. And especially if the audience was a Fox News, typical Fox News audience, and they were hoping to see Pete, up against the ropes, for Pete to know that Trump is failing in approval on economy and coronavirus, and to turn it around and to go right at those topics is absolutely perfect. Here is Mayor Pete calling Trump out for not respecting his own followers by stuffing them into rooms during a pandemic.
Look, we've seen the Vice President Biden campaigning across the country. There's one key difference, which is he's never going to stuff his supporters into a room without masks in an indoor space over the objections of local public health officials. When you do that, you show a level of fundamental disrespect for your own supporters.
So Martha MacCallum started to push back and Mayor Pete didn't back down. Let's take a look.
The point is that there's respect for the health and safety of the people attending the event. You set a certain tone when you lead people to a certain place. And if you lead people to danger, you bear some responsibility for that. In Tulsa and more recently Nevada, he led people into danger. And you know how he can tell? You can tell what a dim view he has of the intelligence of his own supporters. Was something they were made to do, was sign a waiver saying they wouldn't sue him if they got sick and died. Think about what that says for the respect that he has.
Very, very well done. And then lastly, here is Mayor Pete. This is now the day after the VP debate. He was interviewed by Fox and Friends, specifically Steve Doocy, and he is going right at Donald Trump's comments about troops being suckers. And remember, Mayor Pete is a veteran, and Steve Doocy tries to interrupt twice. Mayor Pete just doesn't allow it.
I also appreciated that she stood up for American troops. You know, the President of the United States calling those who served suckers and losers, saying he didn't understand what's in it for them while he was standing on the hallowed ground of Section 60.
Right, but Mayor Pete, you know the President
I think anyone who
has said,
served knows what Section 60 means.
Sure,
and,
indeed.
You know, the way he talked about folks like John McCain.
I hated to interrupt you, but you know the president has denied that particular story.
Right, but we know he's lying because, you know, even in the middle of his denial,
how do we know he's lying?
He said, I never called well, because part of his denial was he said, I never called John McCain a loser, and anybody with Twitter can go and see where he did. So to believe that he was lying in that part of his sentence, but not another part. I remember this is a guy who, back when he was a wealthy young man in New York, born to privilege, thought to himself, I'm going to let some sucker go to Vietnam in my place, and pretended to be disabled. I mean, if you really believe the president now on this kind of stuff, I got a bridge to sell you.
All right.
Really, really good stuff. I mean, really just a clinic on how to deal with Fox News. And in each of those clips, you see something different. But what's common to all of them is you see the anchors' faces, Steve Doocy, Martha MacCallum. They don't know how to handle this because Mayor Pete is brutally handling them and doing it so quickly. Just really, really well done. I hope we see much, much more of this, particularly in the lead up to and even after this Thursday night's presidential debate, for which I hope you will join me. I will be live starting half an hour before the debate, maybe even 45 minutes, on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Don't miss it. Also, don't miss today's bonus show. We will talk about the Jeffrey Toobin fiasco. We will talk about Slovakia testing the entire country for coronavirus. And we will also talk about the New Zealand election results. Very interesting election results out of New Zealand, a country that has handled the virus very, very well. So get instant access to the bonus show one of two ways. Become a member at joinpacman.com or become a patron at patreon.com/David Pakman Show.